Hi folks, this is Bob Piorun. After my first installment on rhythm changes and how to solo on them, I got a great response. Thousands of people viewed it and I got some favorable responses, and I decided to do a part two about, again, rhythm changes and how to solo on them. If you aren't familiar with rhythm changes, I highly suggest you go and find my first installment and get the basics of them, because otherwise a lot of this may be meaningless to you. So what I'm going to do, I gave this a lot of thought, and I thought the best way to address this, a lot of chord substitutions and alterations and enhancements you could make to chords and rhythm changes, I thought I would do something even more far-reaching, is really address what half of rhythm changes are. Now, if you know what rhythm changes are, it's 32 bars of various chords, and half of rhythm changes, half of the 32 bar structure, is basically 1-6-2-5. So today, what I'm going to do is just address that. 1-6-2-5, because that chord progression is very important to jazz. Probably next to the blues, the most important progression you can understand. Mainly because not just it's used in rhythm changes, but also the fact that it's used in turnarounds in songs. It's used for intros. So all the things I'm going to talk about today, not only would they be useful for rhythm changes, they'll be useful for many other things you're going to encounter in jazz and improvisational music. So first of all, if you're not familiar again with rhythm changes, go back and understand what they are. And keep in mind, as I said in that first installment, if you were soloing on rhythm changes, you could play on a B-flat major pentatonic scale. You can play on a B-flat minor pentatonic or blues. But some of the things I'm going to do today, once you learn some more, some different ways to play the chords, you can also play off the chord changes, which I'll also try to address. But first of all, let me start right at the beginning, and let's talk about what 1-6-2-5 is. Let's start with probably the most basic chord progression of all, the real roots of what 1-6-2-5 is. I'm going to play one measure of B flat and one measure of F7. So what I've got there is the 1 chord to the 5 chord. Now basically that's what 1-6-2-5 is. The reason for that is, yes, there's a G minor in there, but G minor is very much related to B flat. As a matter of fact, if you took a G minor and put or B flat and put a G on the bass, you'd have G minor 7. And the C minor 7 is very close to F7. For example, if you went out here and played a C minor 7, as a lot of jazz players would play, and play an F9th, you'll notice how similar they are. They have common notes and a very common sound to them. So what I'm saying is B flat 1 measure to F7 1 measure is a simple way to think of a 1-6-2-5. Let's say you were soloing, you might just think of that as B flat to F7. So what I'm thinking of, I'm not thinking of all 4 chords. I'm just thinking of 2 chords, B flat and F7. So keep in mind that that's really the roots of what 1-6-2-5 is. Now let's go a bit further, and from there I'm going to play the chord progression 1, 6, 4, 5. One of the staples of doo-wop music, for example, and still used today in a lot of rock ballads or R&B tunes. That's 1, 6, 4, 5. Well, what they did, they took the 4 chord, E flat, and just turned it into C minor 7, which is very similar. And so basically that's the same thing, just a little jazzier approach would be play B flat, G minor 7, C minor 7, F7. So there's our very basic 1, 6, 2, 5. First of all, coming from the bare roots and then from the basic rock chord progression. So what I want to look at is a lot of different ways we can enhance and alter these chords to make them more interesting, more colorful, and give you more ideas for soloing. The first thing I'd like to talk about, I like to think of changing a chord in two ways. I call this enhancing a chord. For example, if I take B flat and play B flat major 7 or B flat 6th or B flat 9th, I don't think of that I'm substituting a chord. I think that I'm just enhancing a chord somewhat. So we should get those terms straight. And for example, if I play G7, make it into G9th, I don't think of that as a substitution necessarily. I think of that as an enhancement of the chord. If I took G minor 7 and added the 9th, I'm just kind of enhancing the chord. So again, that's my way of looking at the enhancement of the chord. I think of a substitution as where I'm going to change the chord completely. And in my little talk here, I'm going to be dealing with two main substitutions. First of all, what they call the tritone substitution. What this is, if you're a guitar player, an easy way to do this is, if I take any given 7th chord, like F7, and find the flatted 5th root away from it, which can be done very easily on the guitar in this manner. The flatted 5th or interval of the devil or whatever, very demonic sound. The flatted 5th. If I took any given 7th chord and I can substitute a chord that's a flatted 5th away. For example, if I have an F7, I can see what a flatted 5th away is. It's a B. I can use a B7th there. Now, I'm not going to go into that in depth, although you can investigate that, why that works. But the basic reason is the guts of both chords are the same. They have some common notes. So that's called a tritone substitution because this interval is a tritone. So that's one kind of substitution I'm going to use, the tritone substitution, where I can substitute a chord that's a flatted 5th away. Another kind of chord substitution I'm going to use is where we take the one chord. Again, I'm doing all this in B flat because rhythm changes were most often done in the key of B flat, so to accommodate the B flat instruments. So I'm doing all this in B flat. If I take the one chord in B flat, which is B flat, or in this case B flat major 7, I can substitute a D minor 7 for it. Now the reason for that is, so I can substitute the 3 chord for any given 1 chord. So if I have B flat, I can count up 3, B flat, C, D, and the 3 chord in the key is a minor or a minor 7. I can substitute D minor or D minor 7 for B flat. Again, the reason for that is they have common tones. You can play a B flat major 7 and then play a D minor 7, and you'll notice how similar they are. So those are two common substitutions, the tritone substitution and substituting the 3 chord for the 1 chord. Then, of course, we can do all these enhancements. Now that leads me to the next subject. This F augmented 7th or F plus 7 or F7 plus. I'm using F as an example. It can be done with any chord. This has always bothered me because having done a lot of big band charts in playing reading chords for musical theater and so on, sometimes these chords are written out by people who may not be really fully understanding them. Now, F plus 7 or F7 plus has nothing to do with adding the 7 to the chord or whatever. It's not about the 7th. The plus, as in most cases, means to augment the 5th. So this chord is really F augmented 7th or F7th augmented. Now, I think the symbol is very confusing to people because they will sometimes think that plus means add something to the chord, or they think it means sharp, do something with the seventh, and it isn't. I like to write this chord out as F7 sharp 5, and that is very clear. So that's a little pet peeve I have about that F plus 7 or F7 plus. I have to use that very often when I'm writing charts on my computer because my software has that programmed into it. I have to go to another, change it if I want to, because that's kind of a default setting. So anyways, you're going to see that chord, the 7 sharp 5 or 7th augmented. Okay, so now what I'm going to do here, I'm going to put up a chart of 22 variations on 1625. Now, that's only the tip of the iceberg. You could go on and find many more. I'm going to use this as a starting point, and if you want to find others, obviously they're out there. I'm going to try to explain them little by little. I've numbered them. You'll see on the chart, I've numbered them from 1 to 22. These are all variations of 1625. Again, I started with 1645 because that's kind of the daddy of them, and then the basic 1625. Now, the first thing I do is make the B flat into a major 7, the G minor into a G minor 7, the C minor into C minor 7, F7. So that's pretty basic. And then I again enhance the chords by making, on example number 4, B flat major 9, G minor 9th, C minor 9th, F 9th. So again, those are just enhancements to the chord. Number 5 is B flat 6, G minor 7, C minor 7, F7 flat 9. So up to that point, up to example 6, I'm really not using any substitutions. Now on example 5, I'm replacing the B flat with D minor 7. It's 3 chords. So now I've got D minor 7, G minor 7, C minor 7, F7. And already we're getting to the point where when you solo on rhythm changes, as I said before, you can play off of the pentatonic scale and be oblivious to the chords, or the blues scale and do a lot of nice things. But if you want to start addressing the chords, you might start with some of these basic ones. For example, D minor 7, G minor 7, C minor 7, F7. If I actually address the chords, I actually am playing something off of each chord. So keep that in mind, because as you go on with these, you can do more and more of this and actually address the chords once you understand what you're using. The next one is example number 10. By the way, the numbers are underneath these, so might be make sure you don't misinterpret that. What progression I'm on is underneath. So I'm on number 10, where I'm playing D minor 7, G7, sharp 5, C 9th, F7 flat 9. Okay. So from there on, I get up into all kinds of alterations of the chords until I get to example 17, where I'm going to use the tritone substitution. Now in example 17, I'm taking the G chord. Oh, I did miss one thing. I've got to go back and talk about one other thing I did miss. An important thing I should have mentioned first. So basically my rhythm changes use a G minor 7 and a C minor 7. But people will often take those minor 7s, G minor 7, C minor, and make them 7s. Normally we don't do that in music. We don't normally take a minor chord and make it into a 7th. But rhythm changes in this jazz way of playing 1625, there's a lot of open possibilities, and there's a lot of things they do. I once heard the term for, let's say G minor 7 is compared to G7 in this context is soft changes as hard changes. I thought that was kind of intriguing. I guess G minor 7 being minor would be soft changes, and G7 would be hard changes because we're using the minor third and then the major third for G7. But people will often do this. They will actually change the nature of this chord. Now, this one, I guess this is a substitution. Instead of using G minor 7, I'm not necessarily enhancing it. I'm actually changing it to G7. So sometime instead of going B flat, G minor 7, C minor 7, F7, people will go B flat, G7, C7, F7. Now once we got that going, and let's take that B flat and again make it D minor 7. Now I've got D minor 7, G7, C minor 7, F7. Now we've got a lot of things we can do. D minor 7, G7, flat 9, sharp 5, C minor 7, F7, sharp 5, flat 9. Or even simpler, D minor 7, G7, flat 9, C minor 7, F7, flat 9. And again, addressing those chords. See, I'm trying to get the sound of some of those chords, like the flatted ninth in there on the G7 and the F7. So now at that point, I've got D minor 7, G7, C minor 7, F7. Now let me make the D minor into a minor ninth in G7 and C minor in F7. Now this time I'm going to go D minor ninth to G7 sharp 5, flat 9, C minor ninth, F7 flat 9, sharp 5. Now, next I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to play D minor ninth and substitute a D flat chord for the G7. The flat fifth substitution. I'm going to go D minor 7, D flat ninth, C minor 7, B ninth. So a simpler form of that would be D minor 7, D flat 7, C minor 7, B7. Again, I told you I'm doing this to look at these, the 1645, 1625 from rhythm changes, but this is material for intros and everything. For example, let's say you have to give somebody an intro in B flat. I just played that twice. D minor 7, D flat 7, C minor 7, B7. Or a variation of that, D minor 9th, D flat 9th, C minor 9th, B7th. So this is a lot of material for intros and also turnarounds. Now, one thing I should mention, one of the reasons I wanted to concentrate on this 1625, if you look at rhythm changes, 32 bars long, half of rhythm changes are 1625. Sometime in the near future, I'll do installment 3, and I will address the bridge, where less things are done. You can do a number of things with the bridge as far as enhancing it, and let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth and sixth measures, which I'm not addressing right now, but I'm concentrating on the 1625 because this is half. If you took a 32 bar rhythm changes structure, half of it is this. So you could take any of these things from my sheet and just mix and match them. Now, when I get down to number 19, the example there, I've got this going on at number 19. let me talk about that because actually this couples up nice with number 18. Let me do these together. Number 19 and 20 I'm going to play. Okay, now what I did there, I've got B flat major 7, no change there. But now I've got a B diminished 7th chord. You may wonder what's going on with that. But it's used to lead on to the next chord, C minor. But that B7 flat 9, that's just another way of playing G7 flat 9. Or that B7, B diminished 7th is kind of a G7 flat 9. Here's an interesting thing, if you've never noticed on your guitar. You take a G9 chord, you flat the 9th. This is G7 flat 9. You'll notice G7 flat 9 looks just like a diminished 7 chord. And it acts like a diminished 7 chord. So G7 flat 9 looks like B diminished, as well as F diminished, D diminished, A flat diminished. So this B diminished is really just a G7 flat 9, and both chords want to lead to C minor. That's where I'm going next. So I got B flat major 7, B diminished 7, C minor 7. Now, before I go to the next chord, the chord after that's D minor. Well, I'm using C sharp diminished to get there. That's a passing tone. So this gives me this very cool chromatic bass line. Now I'm to D minor 7, to G7 flat 9, to C minor 7, to F7 flat 9. So there's a nice string of 8 chords that you could use in the first 2 measures of rhythm changes. And again, if I outline those chords, I was actually just playing off of those chords. So once you understand what you're playing, you can actually make up some licks coming off the actual chord changes. Now the final one on that page, a chord progression on that page, and they couple up nice together, they're similar by 1 chord, is number 21 and 22. I actually have 1 chord per beat. You could actually think of this as almost a harmonized bass line. Now, I don't know if you want to go that far with that many chords in your rhythm changes. That's getting, especially since they're played at a rather quick tempo, because it would be hard to get all those chords in at a quick tempo, but just to show you the possibilities. So again, the whole idea of this, my rhythm changes part 2 in the chords and soloing the chords, I'm just addressing the 1-6-2-5, which is 1/2 of rhythm changes. If you look at rhythm changes, 32 bars, half of it is this. But it has a far more far-reaching thing, because now you got all these possibilities to play all kinds of intros and turnarounds by enhancing the chords. You can take my examples and mix and match. You can take number 11 and number 14 and put them together, or number 6 and number 16 and do them, and they will work very well. They're all just variations, and there's, I won't say an infinite amount, there's many, many other possibilities that I'm not addressing. So basically I'm doing 2 things. I'm using 2 main substitutions, the flatted 5th tritone substitution and substituting 3 chord for the 1 chord. Then I'm doing a lot of enhancing, where I just, usually with these jazz chords, what you're doing with dominant chords, you're often sharping, flatting the 5th or the 9th. That's where most of the action is. So you get things like G7 sharp 5 sharp 9, G7 sharp 5 flat 9, just G7 sharp 5. You can also use the flat 5, but I think the sharp 5 works best in most cases. So yeah, here's an interesting thing that shows up. Once you get to G7 sharp 5 flat 9 and you put a D flat in the root, you see that you've got a D flat 9. That's also that flat fifth substitution. So this chord is a G7 sharp 5 flat 9, but if I change the root to D flat, I got D flat 9. So they're very similar chords. There I went D minor 7, D flat 9, C minor, or D minor 9th, D flat 9th, C minor 9th, B 9th. Again, 1, 6, 2, 5, just in disguise. So I hope this was somewhat interesting and instructive to you. My name is Bob Piorun, and I hope you enjoyed this. I'm going to do a part 3, and if you get a chance, go on YouTube and look at some of my other instructional videos. I think one that would be helpful to a lot of people, or at least enjoyable, I did a 4-part series on the blues, starting at the very basic of blues and ending up with some jazz blues that have changes every beat. So I did that in 4 parts, and only about 20 minutes long. So I think you'd mind minor blues and all kinds of 8-bar blues and so on. So check out some of those on YouTube. And also a one that's popular you might enjoy is the Circle of Fifths. I did an instructional video on that, and also on AABA form, which is very important if you want to understand how music is often written. As a matter of fact, rhythm changes are a good example of AABA. I also have a book I wrote. I tried to address do the impossible by addressing guitar from the very beginning up into more advanced things. But it starts at the beginning, but for those more advanced players, there's a lot more as it gets further on into it. So it's an all-encompassing book. I talk about modes and how to find the chords in the key and the minor blues and your key signatures and all the best ways to play scales and so on. So that's my complete guitar, the complete guitar player book that I wrote. So anyways, this is Bob Piorun, and I hope you enjoyed this lesson. And if you have questions, feel free to contact me, Piorun at roadrunner.com. My last name is Piorun at roadrunner.com. You might have some criticisms, which I don't mind, but hopefully this is instructional to most people. So thank you very much.